Good evening, everybody. It's now 6:30 and I shall commence this meeting of the Development Control Committee. A few housekeeping announcements. First, fire evacuations. In the event that the fire alarm sounds tonight, we have no fire drills scheduled for this time of the evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building as soon as you can through the nearest available exits, which are situated behind you in the public gallery and behind us here at the main table. We will then meet in the War Memorial Park at the muster point to make sure that everybody's accounted for. Hopefully you won't have to do that. In the event that somebody needs emergency medical assistance, we also have a defibrillator in the kitchen behind me and also in reception downstairs. This meeting is being webcast live, hopefully, and will be available on YouTube after the meeting. And finally, could I request all of us present here that we either switch off our mobile phones or keep them on silent. A few opening remarks on how the committee meeting should be run tonight. For the benefits of all those watching and participating, I'd like to introduce who everyone is. So my name is Councillor Andrew McCormick. I am chair of the committee. To my right are councillors who will be making decisions on the applications on this evening's agenda. To my immediate right and left are council officers who will be presenting the applications and providing advice to the committee. The Development Control Committee is a regulatory committee and not a political meeting. The committee will be considering the published papers, listening to contributions brought before us tonight, and will make decisions based on planning law, planning reasons. These are set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, the Basingstoke and Dean Local Plan and local neighbourhood plans where applicable. At appropriate time, I will invite any speakers to contribute to the meeting in the order set out on the update paper, which is we will have parish council representatives, objectors, supporters and ward councillors. Each sets of parties will be given the same amount of time, which is 4 minutes in total, plus questions and answers. We'll then have a series of opportunities for councillors to ask questions of officers present. If there aren't any questions asked, that may well mean that they've already asked the questions in advance of the meeting. We will then go for a period of debate and then move to vote and have the decision for each application recorded. May I ask all speakers, including visiting members, to speak clearly and to the key points made to the application on material reasons only. No further dialogue between members of the committee and speakers will be permitted once any questioning has finished. All speakers will be reminded of their permitted speaking time and will be advised when they have 1 minute remaining. Any questions raised by committee members will be on matter of fact. So I understand that planning can be emotive and ask that everybody remains polite and professional throughout this evening. So without further ado, we shall commence business. And first off, apologies for absence and substitution. So Councillor Bells, you're standing in for Councillor Hussey, Councillor Howard Sorrell, and we've got we've had a substitution at the back there as well because Councillor Phillimore's now mayor, so he's not sitting on the committee anymore. So Councillor Watts, welcome. Declarations of interest, councillors. Do I have any declarations of interest? Okay. Next item, business urgent matters. I'm not aware of any. There are none. Okay. So moving on. Minutes of the meetings held on the 9th of April and the 23rd of April. We can ask questions on accuracy only. Do I have any questions on the minutes for the 9th? Okay. Do I have a mover? Councillor Freeman. Seconder, Councillor Miller. Okay. All those in favour, please show. Okay. And similarly for the 23rd of April, any questions on accuracy? There are none. Okay. Do I have a mover? Councillor Freeman. Seconder, Councillor Court. All those in favour, please show. Okay, that's the minutes. I shall sign these off afterwards. Councillor Freeman.
I can't remember I know I missed a meeting. It's one of those minutes that I've just said I propose. I think one of them is a meeting that I wasn't here for, so I can't actually do that. I think that was the first one. Got my dates mixed up. I forgot we had 2 to go through, and I was only thinking about last time's one. I know I was here last time, so my mistake. I can't do the first one. I might do the second one. Apologies.
Okay, so do I have a mover and seconder for the first set of minutes? Councillor Court and Councillor Miller. Okay, right. Okay, it's not a recorded vote on the minutes themselves, so okay, we stand duly corrected. Right, moving on to main business tonight, which is planning applications for consideration by the committee, of which we have 8 in front of us. And the first item up is Weller House, so if I could have the officer introduction, please.
Thank you, Chair. The first application in front of us this evening is Weller House at Weller Road in Basingstoke. The proposal is for a 4-storey extension to the north-east elevation of Weller House for 9 flats with a housing mix of 5 one-bedroom apartments and 4 two-bedroom apartments with associated car parking, bin store and cycle parking, relocation of existing bin store and reconfiguration of part of existing car park. Just to note on this application, there is currently a valid appeal lodged with the Planning Inspectorate on non-determination grounds. Therefore, there can be no decision made on the application by the local planning authority. Therefore, the purpose of taking the item to committee would be to confirm what decision members would have made had the application been determined. And in this instance, the recommendation that would have been made was for approval subject to the conditions listed at the end of the report in the main paper. There are no updates on this application.
So for the avoidance of doubt, we shall consider this item as if it were going in front of committee for a decision, but actually that's been preempted by the appeal. Okay. Right. We have 2 objectors, Craig Lewinson and Kevin Day, but they're not here. Okay. Speaking in support, Kerry Futter. We've got Kerry Futter here. Welcome to Development Control. There's some seats in front of you to the right. If you press the right hand button, that will activate the mic. And when you're ready speaking, you'll have 4 minutes. And I'll remind you when you have a minute left. Thanks.
Thank you. As you're aware, an appeal for non-determination has been submitted to the Planning Inspectorate for this application, but I am grateful for the opportunity to speak today and would like to provide some context to that decision. The planning application was submitted in December 2023. It's a minor scheme for 9 flats as an extension to an existing residential block, Weller House, and adjacent to the residential development Park Heights. The planning application should have been determined in February 2024. It was intended to go to committee in autumn 2024, but on 3 occasions was held off the committee agenda with new issues being raised at late notice. The scheme has many positive attributes, and we're pleased that officers would have recommended approval of the application. This is the type of site that is the focus of the NPPF and local plan for new housing development. It is within the settlement boundary, in a sustainable location on an underutilised area of land, even more so now that the council cannot meet the 5-year housing land supply requirement. In relation to the planning matters raised by objectors, a number relate to residential amenity, including concerns for overlooking, privacy, loss of light. As the officer confirms, this is not the case. The extension is located on the blank brick north-east elevation of Weller House. An appropriate distance is maintained from the nearest section of Park Heights, which is set at an angle to Weller House with oblique views. Highway safety and parking were also raised, but there is no objection from the highways officer, and additional information from a highways consultant has been submitted to confirm that the parking layout is acceptable and has no implications for highway safety. The parking onto Weller Road reflects that at the site opposite, but with the benefit of additional landscaping. The prior approval for the conversion of the building, Weller House, to residential flats did not require the provision of open space, and the application site has no requirement to be used in this way. It is essentially an area of grass verge. It is adjacent to the vehicle access and a bin store structure. With regard to car parking, sorry, just to add also that there were a number of non-planning related matters that were raised, which I would have raised, but I understand the objectors aren't speaking today, so, but I'm happy to answer any questions on those. With regard to car parking, it's stated in the officer's report that 13 car parking spaces are required for the development and under provision of 2 spaces. Hampshire County Council has in fact confirmed that 9 spaces would be acceptable. The scheme actually provides 11, and this is in accordance with adopted standards for 50% or more unallocated spaces in the out and urban area for the 5 one-bed and 4 two-bed flats. Finally, with regards to the building design and finishes, the grey anthracite frames seek to offer a modern finish and variation between the extension and the existing horizontal block, with a visual connection and transition on this corner plot entrance location. The development will improve the appearance and character of Weller Road, as the CGI provided shows, and the plans of the application itself.
1 minute
Thank
left.
you.
Oh, you finished?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant.
Sorry.
Okay. Councillors, do you have any questions for Ms Futter? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I ask what size these flats are, please?
The overall size of the flats is different for the 1-beds and the 2-beds, but they meet the national technical standards. So from memory will be at least 39 square metres for the 1-beds and around 61, I think, for the 2-beds.
39 and 61?
I believe so, yes. But
Thank
they
you.
certainly do meet the national technical standards for the overall size of the flats.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you very much for your contribution, Ms Futter. Do we have any questions for officers? Councillor Bound?
Currently, that isn't part of our own local planning policy at the moment. Also, in terms of, the conclusion on that section, the officer's report has indicated that whilst that's noted, the overall accommodation standards are considered to be acceptable. So it doesn't form part of local policy considerations currently, the space standards.
Any further questions, Councillor Bound?
Yeah, so just the plans you can see in front of you there appears to be an internal connection within the central part of the site connecting into the existing building. You can see the door opening where the hatch line is into the hallway in the proposed structure.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay, in which case we shall move on to debate. Who would like to go first? Of anyone wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not speaking for everybody, but a funny feeling in the back of our minds we've got yet another add-on to a permitted development that's happened in this town, when we all know what our feelings are about that. Hence my question on this question of the size, and I have a sneaky suspicion that's exactly what's going through Councillor Bound's mind as well, bearing in mind the rather disastrous time we've had in a couple of the permitted developments in this town, and the unnecessary excessive work that our officers have had to have of trying to sort it all out. And I think that's why we needed an explanation, and I appreciate that. That said, this is probably a better addition to one of these developments. We've now had assurance from the applicants that it's meeting a national standard, which I feel more comfortable with than we've had in the past. And I'm prepared to propose we accept the officer's recommendation. Now, I don't know if that's, we're doing this as per the officer's recommendation for approval in this particular case.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Do we have a seconder, Councillor Durrant? Does anyone else wish to speak? In which case we'll move to vote. Those in favour, please show. That's carried. Yeah, well, I didn't raise my hand, but yeah, I'm an abstention. So if we could have the decision, please.
So in this instance, members have confirmed had the application been determined prior to the non-determination appeal, it would have been recommended for approval or would have been approved as per recommendation in the main report, the main paper.
Thank you very much. Which brings us on to the next item, Headley Recreation Ground. Gemma, if you could introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. Item 2 seeks planning permission for the provision of a multi-use games area enclosed by V-mesh fencing, which would measure 3 metres in height at Headley Recreational Ground. By way of update, it is clarified that the comments reported within the main agenda on page 119 to 121 of the main agenda from Councillor Steve Dunn and Councillor Steve Hoskins were received in their capacity as parish councillors, and it is acknowledged that Ashford Hill with Headley Parish Council are the applicant for this application. In addition, it was noted that the mandatory biodiversity net gain condition was omitted from the main report, and that is to be included as a new condition, and the wording is set out in the update paper. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed on page 127 to 129 of the main agenda, and as updated in the update paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we don't have any parish councillors registered to speak tonight. We don't have anyone registered to speak in objection, but we do have registered to speak in support. Mr. Jeff Allwright, welcome to Development Control. If you'd like to approach and seat on one of the seats on the right there. Right hand button. That's it. When you're good to go, you've got 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm Jeff Allwright. I'm a local volunteer. I was seconded onto the team as project manager for this development at the request of the Chair of Parish Council, Steve Hoskins, who is here with me, and Councillor Kerry Murrow, who is also here. Presenting in favour, we are a team of 4 with 3 parish councillors and myself. The idea of more recreation and sport facilities in Headley Ashford Hill was first mooted many years ago by some previous councillors. With the new pavilion in place and the success of the 11-a-side football, we decided to explore more uses for what is our recreation area. We surveyed villagers and had a great response with over 80 children and many adults saying that they would use the mugger regularly. We also visited other villages and towns with similar provision and found that muggers were very popular and often fully booked. This was backed up by many consultations with Paul Martin at the Basingstoke and Dean Sports Department, who fully backs this project. Paul has given us some great advice, and we will continue to work with him on the tender and build process if we're granted permission. Our parish has seen an enormous increase in housing in the last 10 years, many families living here partly attracted by the excellent schools, both state and private. These schools do not allow for the use of their sports facilities to the public most days, and currently the only publicly available sport in the parish are one 11-a-side football pitch with goals and nets, one basketball hoop and a cricket pitch, all grass-based. To play any other sport at any time therefore requires travel to Kingsclear, Basingstoke or Newbury, all of which are chargeable facilities and at least 20 minutes away. It's not possible for children without the use of a car, and travel is not environmentally friendly. One 12-year-old boy attended our public meeting and spoke of how he and his mates would love to use our mugger to help their well-being and get them off their screens. I'm pleased to say that we also have the backing from the Sports Council, local parish and borough councillors, and we expect the Greenham Trust. Rob Daniels of Greenham has visited the site and provisionally agreed support if planning is approved. We have met all the planning requirements thus far with good environmental, tree, biodiversity and noise surveys. The Borough Cabinet member councillor responsible for communities, partnerships and inclusion is also in support. We know that this sports provision will be a big boost to the improvement of well-being and mental health in the parish. You will see in the documents provided by the planning team that they have provided clear responses to all the objections raised by the public and is supporting the provision of this facility. The mugger will have an app-based booking system that is linked to the gate control, meaning we will know who is using the facility and when. We can therefore also close the mugger out of hours and allow priority access to locals.
1 minute left. Carry on, yeah.
The mugger will have an all-weather surface, fencing and be marked out for tennis, five-a-side football and basketball. We know that it can be also used for a wide range of activities including aerobics, martial arts, walking football, netball and many others. The mugger will have full disability access and will enable many disability sports to take place, including wheelchair basketball, we foresee. We would like to thank the Council for all their support and advice that we've received thus far and look forward to working with the Council teams should planning be approved. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Councillors, do we have any questions for Mr Allwright? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution.
Thank you.
If you'd switch the mic off on the right-hand button.
Oh, yeah.
That's great, thanks very much. Questions for officers? Councillor Bound.
Yes, I have one question now from what Mr Allwright has said. I think he did mention support from borough councillors, which puts me in an awkward position. I don't believe that I have expressed any opinion on the application, but I will leave it over to Anne, because Mr Allwright said councillors, borough councillors.
Yeah. You know whether or not you've expressed support, and if you're not predetermined, then you're entitled to be here.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Miller. Oh, Councillor Court. Yes, Councillor Court, then Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm looking for some clarification on the update paper, the comments from the officer there, particularly to do with the BNG condition. We have got a lot of detail there, and I think other committee members here would value perhaps a bit of a précis why we have all this amount of detail. That's all.
The wording that's been produced in the condition is the standard wording, slightly expanded upon as a result of the change for applications to require mandatory biodiversity net gain, so that the information that needs to be provided to satisfy that condition is all set out in the legislation. I appreciate it is quite a wordy condition, but it is all of the requirements that is set out in the legislation, and we can't really change the wording of it.
Councillor Miller. Councillor Court, do you have an additional one?
Just to say, so what we have here is as the legislation in its complete form.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think we picked up the update paper as we walked in the room tonight and took a look at this. If I could make a comment, the legislation, quite frankly, doesn't need to appear in the update paper. The officer's decision, bearing in mind that legislation, yes, and that's in bold, and that's what I think have satisfied the committee. That's my personal view. But to have the legislation that has just confused us because it generates more questions in our mind. I just make that observation, Chair. Thank you.
Noted. Any more questions? Councillor Jones.
Having a playing area which has troubles with its locks. Did I hear that it would be locked? And do we have any indication of when it will be unlocked or how it will be unlocked?
Yes, the operational statements submitted by the applicants indicate that it would be bookable on an app, and they have indicated that they would lock the facility. The hours of use are to be conditioned. That's condition 4, which can be found on page 128. But in terms of how the facility is physically locked, that's not to, that doesn't form part of the recommendation, but the hours of operation you would be able to enforce again the hours that it's used through that condition.
Any further questions? Don't see any hands raised. Okay, in which case we'll move on to debate. Councillor Durrant.
Yeah, excuse me. I think it's great to see the recreation ground being expanded in this way to give the youth outdoor facilities. I fully concur with the officer's recommendation and would be happy to move to approve, but obviously others may wish to speak.
Councillor Freeman, Councillor Court.
In total agreement with Councillor Durrant. I do think we need a lot more multi-use games areas in Basingstoke. So to see this one going up, it will be a good thing. And I'm happy to second a motion to approve.
Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really support the recommendation from the officer.
Councillor Bowes. The same. Okay. Right. If we've got nobody else wanting to contribute, we shall move to vote. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So if we could have the decision, please.
Thank you. That application is approved, subject to the conditions set out in the main agenda and update paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Which moves us on to the next item, the gamekeepers at Maple Durwell. Brian, if you'd like to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is at the gamekeepers, Tunworth Road, Maple Durwell. The proposal is for the laying of hard standing to provide access to the cesspit for the pump out lorry and to enable the dray lorry to make deliveries clear of the highway. The hard standing is also to serve as an additional parking to serve the gamekeepers public house. Provision of 4 low-level bat-friendly downlighters within the landscape margin. This application is a reduced scheme having regard to a previously refused scheme which was also dismissed upon appeal. This application is a reduction in car parking area of 50% and also includes increased landscaping. Officers have recommended this application subject to the conditions listed at the end of the report, and there's no updates on this.
Thank you very much. So we don't have any parish councillors down to speak, but we do have speaking in objection, Lorna Cuthill, if you'd like to approach. Is she here? Ms Cuthill? Okay, and down to speak in support, we've got Phil Costello and Caroline Downey, if you'd like to approach. Welcome to Development Control. When you're seated comfortably, you'll have 4 minutes between the two of you, and the mic button's on the right.
Chairman, members, thank you for your time this evening and for coming out to see the site on Friday. It's much appreciated. As you can see before you, this application is for the laying of hard standing to provide access to the cesspit and also to serve as additional car parking to serve the gamekeepers. The application has been made following an appeal decision in 2024 where the thrust of the inspector's report was that the perceived harm to the character and the landscape from Frog Lane, which is to the east of the car park. This application seeks to rectify this by reducing the size of the car park and replacing it with substantial planting to enhance the landscape and views in to the site from Frog Lane. Having worked very closely with the officer, we have achieved an outcome that the council is happy with and which the applicant is keen to implement as soon as possible. We commend the officer's comprehensive report, which we believe covers the main points. We are here to answer any questions that you may have, but hope that you will agree with officers and recommend the application for approval this evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillors, do we have any questions? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution. Questions for officers? I see no hands raised. Oh, Councillor Doran.
Just for clarity and confirmation, if it's approved and the landscaping, is that all native species? Is that conditioned?
Let me just double check the exact wording of the condition, but I believe that to be the case. Yeah, the plans show proposed native planting. I just want to check the exact wording. Yeah, so the exact wording of the condition outlines that detailed size plants trees based on the detail shown in the proposed site plan. So the detailed proposed site plan refers to native planting, so that would be the expectation with that condition.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay, in which case we'll move on to debate. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chairman. I think once again, this is the value of the viewing panel, because bearing in mind where the what was commented on in the appeal, and I'll come to Frog Lane at the end of my couple of minutes here, is that it was very obvious from the visit, when you're standing in that car park, how the reduction works. It gives the gamekeepers the extra space that they wanted, a little bit more than, but they probably asked too much, but they still got a slight increase in the car parking, which goes directly to the viability of the gamekeepers. And when it was interesting that when we left the gamekeepers in the coach, we were sitting in fairly elevated seats, you cannot see the car park from Frog Lane, because Frog Lane is considerably lower. It's a topographical issue, and what has been done answers all the previous objections, and I'm quite happy to recommend the officer's recommendations. I'll move that.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Durrant?
I'd be happy to second that motion.
Councillor Court? Same.
No, likewise.
Any other speakers? Okay, we shall move to vote then. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. And if we could have vision, please.
The application has been approved subject to the conditions listed at the end of the main report.
Thank you very much. So moving on, next item is Hurstwood 2A Andover Road, Oakley. Gemma, if you could introduce, please.
Thank you. Item 4 seeks planning permission for the erection of a single-storey rear extension with associated fenestration following the demolition of the existing conservatory at Hurstwood 2A Andover Road in Oakley. A 5-metre section of hedge along the eastern boundary is to be removed to facilitate the extension, and just to bring to the committee's attention, a condition is recommended to secure replanting, and that's condition 6 on page 200 of the main agenda. By way of update, there's just a summary of the viewing panel that happened on Friday the 9th of May. In addition, there are some recommended changes to the conditions. In summary, condition 4 is to be amended following the submission of a corrected tree protection plan, and condition 6 is reworded slightly to include the location of the landscaping to be details to be provided. In addition, a further condition is also recommended, which would secure details of new boundary treatments. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed on page 199 to 200 of the main agenda, and as updated in the update. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And we don't have any parish councillors down to speak, but we do have, speaking objection, Vicky Lambert and Sarah Lambert. Welcome to DC. If you'd like to approach and seat yourselves at the 2 seats in the back row. Okay, just one of you then. So you get 4 minutes all to yourself, and I'll remind you when you've got 1 minute left.
Thank you. Good evening. As a resident of Turnpike Way, Oakley, I'm speaking on behalf of local residents who strongly object to this application, which should be refused on planning, legal and procedural grounds due to breach of Condition 2, loss of residential amenity and privacy, disputed ownership of the boundary hedge, and an active enforcement investigation. We understand the officer's recommended approval, however we respectfully but firmly disagree with the reasoning, which rests on two critical and incorrect assumptions. That firstly, the eastern boundary hedge is intact, which it clearly isn't, and secondly, that it is within the applicant's control, neither of which are true. 20 metres of mature hedgerow dating over 50 years old was removed in 2023 by the applicant without consent and in direct breach of Condition 2 imposed in 1984. The condition clearly states the existing screen hedge around the east and west boundaries of the site must be retained at a height not less than 2.5 metres. The planning inspector explained that this was necessary to safeguard the privacy and general amenity of occupiers of the proposed dwellings and the adjoining properties. This is still entirely relevant and necessary today. Since the removal, neighbouring homes on Turnpike Way have suffered direct overlooking and significant disturbance at night, impacting the well-being of certain residents. This application proposes a new window to bedroom 3, which will cause further loss of privacy to neighbouring houses, viewing directly into bedroom and bathroom windows. Following complaints made in 23 and again last week, there is an ongoing active enforcement investigation into the unauthorised hedge removal and fence construction. You are being asked to approve an application while the enforcement team is still investigating breaches of the very condition that this application now seeks to bypass and which contravenes policies EM1 and EM10. Had the hedgerow still been intact, the applicant would now be requesting permission to remove approximately 25 metres of it. And not just the 5 metres, which in itself isn't small, or a small section as claimed. Therefore, would 25 metres of hedgerow be approved for permanent removal, I ask? No is the answer, as this would clearly breach Condition 2 and be refused outright. The plan retroactively legitimises that destruction and creates a dangerous planning loophole. The Council cannot in good faith approve an application that benefits from and is closely tied to unauthorised work still under investigation. To my second point, the hedge does not belong to the applicant. Turnpike Way residents have provided evidence, including property ownership documents and title plans, confirming they own and are responsible for that footpath and this boundary hedge. This includes number 21, who has objected and clearly stated that do not consent to any removal of their hedge. Energy company SSEN has even evidence that their utility pole marked on the plans that is embedded in and directly in line with the section of hedgerow marked for removal sits within the legal boundary on the land of Turnpike Way. Granting planning permission for development on land the applicant does not own and does not have consent to alter will trigger a boundary dispute and civil action. You would be authorising a scheme that cannot lawfully be implemented in full awareness of third-party objections and ownership claims that have been evidenced. There is no Section 73 application to amend or remove Condition 2 either. If this hedgerow is not protected now, it will erode public confidence and send a strong message that long-standing boundary protections, policies and planning conditions can simply be ignored. In conclusion, we respectfully urge the committee to refuse this application, uphold the integrity of its planning conditions for zero removal of any hedge and allow the enforcement investigation to please be completed without bias. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Court, you've got a question?
Good evening, thank you for that. Can you just clarify who you believe the hedge belongs to?
Sure, Councillor. The hedge belongs to a number of residents on Turnpike Way who back onto and own a footpath. And when we purchased the properties, in the properties it says about boundaries, and in it says that the seller owned the property, owned the boundary, which is either a hedge, fence, etc. So by that, we in terms believe that we, as Turnpike Way residents, own it.
So, just to clarify, that paperwork is actually available to demonstrate the hedge does not belong to the applicant?
Yes, especially the SSEN Energy Company, who's even supported evidence confirming that that pole which is engulfed in that hedgerow, where that current fence, as you may have seen, is erected, is actually in front of that pole. That pole is on Turnpike Way land, and that is confirmed by the energy company, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, councillors? Councillor Jones?
Yes, if that pole is on land owned by the owners of Turnpike Way, someone must be receiving income for it or not.
That's not been provided to me by SSEN. However, SSEN did show that there is a way lease agreement for 2A. 2A have the overhead cables only, not the pole. They do get compensation for the overhead cables, but not the pole. The pole is on Turnpike Way.
Any further questions? And speaking in support, we have Ryan Smith. We don't have Ryan Smith. You do. You're okay. Okay, you're passing on your opportunity to speak. Okay. Right then. In which case, we shall move on to questions to officers. Councillors, do we have any questions for officers? Councillor Miller.
I'll try and keep it simple. Thank you, Chair. Could the officers advise me and the rest of the committee, if this was approved, does it mean that we are overturning condition 2 of BDBD 17136?
Only for the 5 metres of hedge that is indicated to be removed on the submitted tree protection plan that is conditioned. The condition that you've just mentioned, condition 2 on the previous permission, would remain intact for the remainder of the hedge.
And next one following on from that, we've heard that there's obviously a boundary dispute. It was identified to us on the viewing panel as well. I am very uncomfortable, and I'm probably echoing a couple of words that the objector just made, that this application is affecting the hedge on somebody else's property without presumably consultation. And we will be giving approval for work to be done on that hedge on the property outside the red line if we went to approval for this application. Is that true?
Firstly, matters of land ownership are a civil matter and not a material planning consideration. But in accordance with the location plan that's been submitted with the application, all works would be confined within that red line that's provided on the location plan on page 203.
Can I just add to that, Councillor Miller? Can I just add to the officer's reply? I think the position is that you're giving planning permission for the development, but you're not giving permission for the works to take place. That is obviously a matter for the applicant to resolve with the landowner.
But may I follow that up? But we are, in terms of this application, it's stating that 5 metres of the hedge has to be removed. That's approving works. That was my concern.
Only if they are able to implement the planning permission. If they can't get the consent of the owner of the land, if it involves the hedgerow, then they can't implement the planning permission. 2 separate issues.
Councillor Court.
Just following on from the question from my colleague here. So if this were to be approved, does this give the applicant any further leverage in terms of a potential case that's going on? And if we are looking at that way around, is there a condition we should put in this approval, if we approve, to actually say no?
No, it doesn't give any additional rights in that sense, and the conditions that we've suggested in the updated recommendation effectively covers the point around replanting, etc. There are no other conditions that we can recommend that would deal with the ownership issue. That's not a matter that could be dealt with via planning condition. It is, as Anne described, a civil matter in relation to whether someone can actually obtain permission if it's necessary to implement the planning permission. So stage one is, should planning permission be granted, yes or no? And that's your decision tonight. Stage two, if that was a positive decision, i.e. for approval, then the applicant would then need to seek permission from whoever owns the land, if it is not themselves, to implement that permission. So granting the planning permission does not give that additional, does not override any ownership issue.
May I just be absolutely clear on this? Anything we do here in terms of this application has no benefit to either party at all. So the case is still extant, that is, to prove who is responsible for the hedgerow. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. They have the benefit of a planning permission. Whether or not they can implement it, if they need consent of the landowner, is a different issue.
Many thanks.
Councillor Watts?
I was saying that I have a difficulty thinking about approving a planning where the building looked, when we were there on site, went over the boundary where that telegraph pole was, because there was talk of having to move the telegraph pole, which the applicant has asked about doing, and it's a building not on their own land. How can we approve that planning? I find that a bit difficult to do, really.
It's a separate matter for them to resolve with the statutory undertaker. It doesn't relate to the planning application that you're determining.
Any further questions? Councillor Durrant?
Yeah, just to sort of clarify in my mind, I believe we've had instances in the past where permission has been given for a proposal that is on land, not in the ownership of the applicant. So are there any precedents that we can just maybe take some comfort in? No? Okay.
We've got some shaking of heads here. We don't have any precedents to hand. Yeah. Councillor Wells?
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly concerned about this removal of the 5 metres of hedge. I'm aware, obviously, the 20 metres that's already been gone has nothing to do with this application, but the 5 metres that's being proposed that it's being removed very much is, and yet it says that it has to be kept at that height. I know this is only 5 metres, but at what point is it that we can ignore what the legislation in place already says? Is there a limit? Is it half a metre, 1 metre, 10 metres? What is the point that we ignore it?
It very much becomes a matter of planning judgment, I think, and the application before us includes 5 metres to be removed. The report assesses the loss of that and considers it to be acceptable. That's the opinion of officers. And in addition, there are conditions that have been recommended for replanting and also to secure details of any further boundary treatments that might be erected along the boundary as well.
Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Chair. One final question on not the hedge this time, but can you actually advise who owns the footpath, please?
It's not for us to say definitively, and it's not relevant to the decision you make tonight, but I have seen just one title plan from one of the owners, which would seem to indicate that the owner owns the subsoil of the footpath. And of course, there is the right-of-way that passes over the top of it, which means that the county council, keeps it free and clear.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Councillor Miller?
This is a matter of, it's quite general. If this is passed tonight, and subsequent to this, I'm assuming this can't be implemented until the enforcement action has been completed. That's an assumption on my part at the moment. Maybe officers can confirm it. If that enforcement is actioned and approved, does that nullify this planning application? Question, what comes first?
Yeah, no, understood, and I appreciate it's a slightly complex situation. So the open enforcement investigation is looking at the hedge that's been removed for the front section, so that part that runs down the side of the front section. There was a previous enforcement investigation looking at the change of, at that time, alleged change of use of land because of the fence and the position of the fence. That was closed as not demonstrating any breach there. But at that time, the removal of the hedge in breach of the original condition was not considered. That's why there's an open enforcement case on that front section. So that's still open, that's still to be resolved, is not part of your consideration this evening because it's not part of the planning application before you. What is before you is the, if you like, the middle part, so the 5 metres that is to be removed. If planning permission was granted, that could be implemented irrespective of whatever eventual decision is made on the enforcement action on the front part of the hedge. Because they are in effect two, I appreciate they relate to the same condition, but they are in effect two separate actions. One would be an implementation of planning permission, one would be consideration of enforcement action.
Subject to the applicant having the right to implement the permission, of course.
Okay, I think it's time to move on to debate at this point. Does anybody wish to open the debate? Councillor Durrant?
Yeah, I think this is one of those difficult ones where we are here to consider planning matters rather than ownership of land. And the planning, it's been clearly stated that the planning permission does not give them the right to build without the owners of the land as approval. So it's a planning issue rather than an ownership issue in my book. So I'm not going to move at this point to approve the officer's recommendation, but I am sort of minded to because of it's a planning issue, not an ownership issue.
Councillor Bound?
Put my 2 pennyworth in. I mean, I've got no problem with the actual application itself for the build. I think the height's okay. I don't think there is any overlooking. The objector mentioned the side window. I don't think that's relevant. It's only a single-storey building. I believe that the roof, as proposed, is fine. There's a certain amount of ambiguity in my own mind about this hedge business, but in terms of the actual application, I don't have any problem with it. So I will move approval and hope that other people, I hope that other people have still got an opportunity to speak on it.
Okay, well, it's been moved and not seconded yet, so anyone else can speak. Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Chair. I'm certainly not going to support this application without some, if we can, get some conditions put in here about the boundary treatments, I think is what they're called. And if we had a boundary treatment that reinstated that hedge as per condition 2 of the original application back in 1982, whenever it was, I would be much more in favour of approving this application, but I can't do it the way it's worded at the moment. It's, as Councillor Durrant said, it's a very complicated situation. I take his point about planning and ownership, but here I'm talking about planning and boundary treatments, and to be driven by what has contravened a condition that this council imposed all those years ago, but still valid, by the applicant, and condone that without correcting it in this application is something I can't live with, and I will be voting against this particular application. That's my view. But I'm trying to keep it to planning. I fully take on board the ownership problem.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, I think it is unfortunate that the previous conservatory, which is being demolished in this application, is on the other side of the site, which would not have all these complications with the hedge, with its conditions. So I think it is unfortunate that we're asked to make a judgment on this application.
Councillor Court?
And just really to support what my colleague here has said about a condition, because I believe this is the only way forward. But again, I'm open to the officer's advice on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Just picking up in relation to the point Councillor Mirren and Councillor Court raised on the condition. So the extent to which a condition can apply is only insofar as what's been set out in the update paper. So again, it goes back to that middle section, the 5 metres that's being proposed through this application to be removed. There is a condition saying about putting that planting back once the extension's finished. What we can't do is extend a condition to potentially rectify a previous breach of planning permission, which is not subject to this planning application. So if that is something that you are seeking to achieve through suggesting the conditions couldn't extend that far to deal with the front part. Condition, as recommended in the update paper, does seek to secure details of landscaping for the reinstatement of the hedge that's going to be removed to allow for the development. So I just want to clarify that part.
That condition would not be reasonable, necessary, or any of the other tests that have to be satisfied for a planning condition to be imposed.
Thank you, Chair. Somebody might remind me of my memory of the viewing panel, but I am convinced that I heard that the close board fencing would be extended along the side there to cover the extension that was going to be built. Now, that, I'm not sure whether that's written in here. I honestly haven't had it'll have to refresh my mind. But that's not the point. We want that hedge reinstated. And to remove 5 metres of it, I'm sorry, that's compounding the felony as far as I'm concerned.
Just to clarify on that point, you are correct. That was mentioned at the viewing panel. I believe the applicant indicated that some boundary treatment might be going in, and that's why in the update paper the officers have suggested a further condition to secure details of boundary treatments. That would secure details to be provided on the design and the location of any boundary treatments in conjunction with the details for landscaping. So officers would need to consider the placement and design of anything that subsequently comes forward, and it might be that a fence along that boundary isn't considered acceptable, but that's why the landscaping condition is also there, so that an acceptable landscaping scheme can come forward through the condition stage that can be further assessed by officers.
Okay, so we have a proposer in favour of the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Durrant? Okay, so now we have a motion proposed and seconded. I'm minded that we move to vote and test this. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. 1, 2. Okay. Those against, please show. That's comprehensively lost, isn't it? Okay. So, councillors and members of the public watching, what we need now that we've had a motion in favour of it rejected, but we need a decision to refuse and reasons for refusal. Yeah, we need a proposer and a seconder, and the proposer needs to shape some reasons for refusal. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at the summary. I'm not sure whether it's the summary I should be looking or the conclusion. I'll take advice from officers, which one you want me to look at, but we normally have a reason for approval. I see that, and I would look at the middle of the summary. It's considered that the proposed extension would not result in any adverse impacts on the amenities of neighbouring properties. I think it would have an adverse impact on the amenities of neighbouring properties. And is considered would not result in any detrimental impact on the street scene. It would have an impact on the street scene because we consider the public right of way a parts of that as it's public access. And I don't think it can be mitigated with a retention. It's turning that particular, the first two sentences of the summary around.
Read that.
And it's noted that Hampshire right of way looking for a condition is recommended. I don't know whether we ended up with one in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Can I just clarify? So what I've noted down is the potential reason for refusal regarding adverse impacts on the street scene of the proposed extension.
Yep.
And the adverse impact on amenities of neighbouring properties. Can I clarify that by that you mean overshadowing or overlooking or loss of privacy?
Well, there's no overshadowing, but it's and we heard this when we were on site. It's those houses along there, having had the removal of the hedge in the first place, we have to go back to their initial removal. This is compounding what the enforcement action is all about. And it's the amenity of the street scene. It is as written in the summary.
So, as I understand it, the impact on the amenity of the street scene, so that's a visual point. Amenity on neighbours in that description can, in terms of being able to see it more, can only, I assume, be related to loss of privacy on that basis.
Well, yes, indeed. We can actually put it down as that.
And just for absolute clarity, because I think it will be necessary to obviously reference this in the decision notice and reasons for refusal, that is informed in part by the extent of removal of additional hedge, not the hedge that's gone.
Yes,
the actual
the one in here, the 5 metres, yes.
And as a consequence, those and the extension lead to that recommendation for refusal on those grounds.
Absolutely. That would be my suggestion. I don't know if any other members of the committee have got anything else they'd like to contribute, but
It's your proposals, though.
that is my proposal. Chairman, thank you very much. And
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Do we have a seconder, Councillor Court? And Councillor Jones, you had your hand raised there.
Yes, it was really just, I think the original houses or dwellings were created for elderly people. It was pointed out in the viewing there were children on this site. The ground appears to be elevated above the ground level, the floor level of this development. Again, children will be likely, they may even have trampolines, so the privacy of the neighbours could be impacted by the removal of this hedge, which will not grow to its present level again till the children are too large for using trampoline.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Court?
One final point, the applicant actually has the remains of the hedge then on his side. He has holes all up and down that hedge. It's the responsibility of who to repair, ? Somewhere that needs to be covered.
No.
Okay, we have a motion for refusal, reasons that were outlined, and we'll have that repeated when the decision's read out. So we'll move to vote now. So those in favour of refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's carried. Those against, please show. 1, 2, and abstentions 1. Right. We have a decision. Can we have it recorded, please?
Thank you. So that application is refused for the reason that the extension in combination with the proposed removal of additional 5 metres of the hedge would adversely impact on the street scene and visual amenity and neighbouring amenity by virtue of loss of privacy, contrary to policy EM10 of the local plan.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Moving on. 45 Trinity Way. Brian, if you'd like to introduce that one.
Thank you, Chair. The next application is at 45 Trinity Way, Basingstoke. The proposal is for an erection of an L-shaped freestanding single-storey outbuilding in the rear garden of the property to be used as a home, gym and household storage. The application is retrospective. It is recommended that the application be refused for the reasons outlined in the main paper, and the requisite enforcement action as outlined in the main paper is undertaken. There's no updates on this.
Thank you very much. And speaking in support, we have Emma Woodley and Paul Willis, if you'd like to approach. Welcome to Development Control. When you're seated comfortably, you'll have 4 minutes between you and the mic buttons to your right.
Good evening, thank you for your time. Prior to construction of the outbuilding, we took reasonable steps to determine whether planning permission was required. After consulting the Council's planning website and being directed to the planning portal, we understood the development to fall within permitted development rights as a common project. There was no indication that converting a parking space would constitute a breach, and as soon as the matter was raised with us, we promptly submitted a retrospective application in good faith. We gave careful consideration to the scale, design and materials of the outbuilding. The structure has been finished in colours and materials that match the windows, fences and fascia cladding of the host dwelling and surrounding properties, ensuring visual harmony with the local character. Our property has 2 tandem design parking spaces located to the rear. These spaces are secluded, enclosed by fences and brick walls, and have no direct access or visibility from our dwelling. This raises substantial concerns in terms of personal and vehicle security. Accessing these spaces is also problematic due to the configuration of the surrounding walls and the incline of the adjacent road. Visibility of the footpath and carriageway is significantly impaired, requiring us to manoeuvre vehicles onto the footpath and partially onto the road simply to gain sufficient visibility. With 2 vehicles and tandem parking, such manoeuvres are frequent and create inconvenience and potential hazards for both pedestrians and other road users. 2.10 of the SPD outlines that parking should be well designed and safe for all road users. We submit that our parking arrangement falls short of this standard. The SPD and the planning approval process for Merton Rise both recognise that tandem parking is problematic and should be limited in use. The Merton Rise Phase 6 parking assessment, approved in January 2016, states that 289 spaces were required under the SPD, but 306 were provided, 17 in excess of the requirement. Furthermore, the SPD's parking standards per dwelling have not changed since 2016. The loss of 1 parking space in this context does not materially impact overall parking provisions within the development and should not be considered to conflict with the policy. We expressed to the planning officer that we would be willing to convert the outbuilding into a garage now or prior to any future sale of the property, but note that this hasn't been included in the report. Section 6.2 of the SPD states that the recommended size of a garage is 3.3 metres by 7 metres, or 23 square metres overall. Our outbuilding has an internal space of approximately 21 square metres, whilst falling slightly short of the recommended size, would still provide ample space for a vehicle and storage. The removal of the outbuilding would cause significant financial hardship, both in terms of the cost of removal and the loss of income currently derived from its use. We've made every... every effort to cooperate with the planning team and remain open to further discussions that would allow us to retain the structure with any reasonable adjustments required. In light of what we have explained today, we respectfully request that this application be approved. We believe the development has been carried out in good faith, the outbuilding is visually appropriate, the original parking arrangement was substandard and problematic, and its removal would serve no meaningful planning benefit, especially given the surplus parking provision within the estate. Allowing this application would not undermine the aims of local planning policy or compromise the character or functionality of the area.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Durrant.
Currently, how many vehicles do you have?
We have 2 vehicles. One of them is parked on the remaining driveway space. The other is parked within one of the 18 unallocated spaces on St Cross Road.
Right, so just to confirm, it's off-road parked?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Freeman.
Just as a point of clarity, did you say you make an income from the outbuilding that you
Yeah,
put up?
so it's used as a gym. My partner's part-time personal trainer. It's used for clients for about 7 hours a week, generally a 1-to-1 or 1 to 2 or 3 people at a time. We have made provisions with any visitors to the property to not park on the road, to utilise the, as I mentioned, 18 unallocated spaces, or park at the local shop and then walk to the property, or even walk if they can.
Thank you. It was the parking that I was trying
Yeah.
to ascertain whether it was going to create an increase in parking. Thank you.
Any more questions, councillors? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. Any questions for officers? Councillor Miller.
Number 45 Trinity Way, how many parking spaces does it need? And were they within the boundary area of that particular property?
Yeah, there's two spaces are allocated. There's a condition on for 2 parking to be retained as per the approved plan under reserved matters. I'm just trying to see if we can pull up the plan that shows the 2 parking spaces. It's not, the approved plan's not on the visual. It's essentially, for all intents and purposes, where you can see what's, I think, identified as the garden room. There's a space there, space coming out towards the driveway, 2 tandem spaces, and that was as per the approved reserved matters with a condition on requiring parking to be retained as per the approved plans.
And because it was a little confusing, I think this structure that's been built, has that taken away one of those parking spaces?
Yes, it's taken away one. So we're
thank you very much. Yep.
Any further questions, Councillor Durrant?
Just a couple of things. Is there no issue that we have to think about regards the use of the new property as a business?
This is covered in the officer's report in terms of that. It was considered in this instance from the submission details that the scope of the use was within what would be considered ancillary to the residential use. Essentially, as a planning judgment as to where that would creep into what will require a change of use, and officers were satisfied from the submitted information, the extent of the use, that would be ancillary, and therefore it wouldn't require additional parking as per the standards.
Thank you for the clarification. Just one other point. I know in my ward we have a number of instances where parking spaces have been lost and the parking is ended up on the road. Whereas in this case, yes, it's lost, but it is using an unallocated off-road space. So I think there are some precedents here that we should consider. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll move on to debate. Who would like to go first? Councillor Miller?
Thanks. I asked the last question for a reason. We have policies within our local plan, parking policies. There are a lot of policies that we have to set to one side because of, in the local plan, because of the housing land supply, but this is one we don't need to set aside as parking. Retrospective applications to approve a denial of, or a contravention of one of our most important policies here, which is the parking policy, is something that I think every councillor in every ward sort of has to think 3 times before accepting, because parking is a perennial problem all over. It's a national problem, we all know that. And yet another car going, not being able to park within the curtilage of a property is another car that's going to be somewhere else. On that basis, I can't support this application.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, it's up for refusal. I'm supporting this application for that very reason.
So are you moving approval?
Oh, I'll move the officer's recommendation on this.
Move recommendation?
Yep.
Okay, right. Refusal, okay. Anyone else like to speak? Do we have a seconder?
Sorry, I'm not seconding.
Okay.
I just wanted to reinforce what I said. We have had precedent set where we have lost parking spaces in the borough and the parking has ended up on the road, and in this case it is not ending up on the road, it's ending up on an off-road space. I think that's worthy of consideration.
Councillor Court, I see a hand raised there. Okay, right, so we have a seconder. Anyone else have anything to speak? Councillor Watts?
I don't know if this is something you can consider in this, but I'm concerned that if you do say that actually you could, approve what they've done, what's happened with the building, that you could set a precedent that other people could do the same in the area, and then you wouldn't have any extra unused parking spaces. So I'm not sure that I could prove.
Precedent isn't the sort of material planning reason that we would seek to justify an approval or refusal in any instance, just to clarify on that point.
Councillor Gaskell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask officers, if this refusal carries through tonight, is there any provision, well, I'd like to ask what would happen. Obviously, this is an enforcement, but is there any provision to work with the applicant and make another parking space on what land they've got?
Sorry, Councillor, could I just ask you to clarify that point, just so I was looking for the correct...
Yeah, I mean, basically, I can see that you could probably put 2 parking spaces there without taking away the building. Can we, or would our officers be prepared to work with them and suggest that they could do that?
Without being privy to every element of what's going on in terms of dialogue with the applicants here, I know there has been some correspondence and discussions have taken place. I'm sort of looking at this on screen, trying to see if there's an obvious solution. I mean, I'm sure there would be continued dialogue with offers post-decision, whether or not there may be a potential, but that would obviously have to be a material change from what we would have considered tonight if they were to look to submit a further application. I don't think there'll be any reluctance in officers to discuss it. I can't tonight say any obvious or definite solutions though at the moment.
I think you answered my question, really. It just seems a shame to take away the building. It is a business and it doesn't look bad. It's just the parking and on all the issues it could generate with precedent. I think that's a concern. But I can see there that you could park 2 cars side by side and it would be better than what they originally had. So it's just a question that I had. Thank you.
I think the onus would be upon the applicant to come back with another application showing whether or not it could be done, and were they to be able to do that, then it might be that enforcement action would be just held off whilst they did it, possibly.
Okay, so we've got a live motion proposed and seconded. So I'm going to move us to vote now. Those in favour of the recommendation to refuse and enforce, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. Those against, 1. Abstentions, 1. Okay, that's carried. If we could have the decision recorded, please.
The application has been refused as per the main paper, with the appropriate enforcement action to be undertaken.
Thank you very much. Next item is Viables Farmhouse. And Gemma, if you'd like to introduce that one, please.
Thank you, Chair. Item 6 seeks planning permission for the replacement of the external staircase, construction of a new access ramp and external works at Viables Farmhouse at Viables Craft Centre. There is no update. The application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions listed on pages 233 to 234 of the main agenda. The application has been brought to the Development Control Committee tonight as the applicant is Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we don't appear to have anybody down to speak on this, in which case we'll go straight to questions for officers. Do we have any questions for officers, councillors? See shaking heads, no hands raised. In which case then we'll move on to debate. Councillor Miller.
I feel as if I'm moving along here. We know why this has come before the committee, Chairman, and it's because of the process and procedural aspects of a property owned by the Borough Council. I would just like to propose the officer's recommendation. I'll move that.
And do we have a seconder, Councillor Durrant?
Yes, I'd second that.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak before we vote? I see no hands raised now. Okay, we'll move to vote. Those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. So if we could have the decision recorded, please.
Thank you. That application is approved subject to the conditions listed in the main agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Which moves us on to item number 7, 17 Merton Road. Brian, if you'd like to introduce that one, please.
This application is at 17 Merton Road, Basingstoke. It's for the erection of a solar carport. The application is recommended for refusal for the reasons outlined in the main paper. Just to note, there have been 2 previous applications for solar carports of similar design and scale that have been refused. Just to note on the update paper, apologies. Just to note on the update paper, we've received 11 letters of support following the publishing of the main paper. These are summarised within the update paper. It's acknowledged, whilst these comments are noted, the main paper set out the reasons as to how the conclusion was formed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have anyone down to speak in objection, but we have Lawrence Bradbury down to speak in support. Welcome to Development Control. When you're seated comfortably and your mic's on, you'll have 4 minutes. Thank you. Right hand button.
Hi, good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Lawrence Bradbury and I have been a resident of Basingstoke for nearly 30 years, and I've lived at my current home on Merton Road for over 24 years. I'm here to speak in support of our planning application for a solar carport at number 17. The proposal is based on a practical need to have a sheltered area to park and unload my vehicle, especially during poor weather, combined with a deep commitment to sustainability. Therefore, we are proposing an open-sided cantilevered carport with a transparent glass roof fitted with integrated photovoltaic solar panels. The structure provides shelter from both rain and sun, and while serving as much forward-thinking purpose, clean energy generation. It's a solution that respects the aesthetic of the neighbourhood while contributing to broader environmental goals. The committee report claims that we've submitted the same application multiple times. This is not the case. After our initial submission and following discussions with Planning Officer Colette Miller, we revised the design considerably, adopting a cantilevered structure and relocating it to the right-hand side to create a vehicle route aligned with the existing drop curb. This demonstrates our willingness to adapt the proposal in line with planning guidance and feedback. There appears to have been an error in the uploaded files, as the design is not the design that we have submitted. My property is one of the few on Merton Road that is set back significantly, about 10 metres from the pavement, compared to the standard 5 metres along the rest of the road. This provides approximately 85 square metres of driveway, and the carport would only occupy a small portion of that space, preserving the openness and visibility from the street. I would also like to take some time to highlight the sustainability benefits of our proposed carport. Integrated solar carports are an increasingly important part of the sustainable urban development. By generating clean electricity directly on site, the structure will help reduce my household reliance on the national grid and lower carbon emissions. The energy generated will power everyday appliances, reduce utility bills, and potentially allow for future electric vehicle charging, further aligned with national and local goals for decarbonising transport. In practical terms, a solar carport is a smart use of space. Instead of adding a structure that simply shelters a vehicle, we're creating a dual-purpose installation. Moreover, the open-sided glass roof design keeps the structure visually light and unobtrusive. It's not just an environmentally responsible option, it's an architecturally sensitive option. This is a small-scale intervention with a big-picture mindset. We are proposing a modest, sustainable solution to a common household need without harming the street scene, which, as far as I've read, is not in contravention of policies EM1 and EM1. Merton Road has low sensitivity with regard to EM1, and also EM10, where the carport is aligned because we'll be using highly durable and recyclable materials. I respectfully ask the committee to support this application, not just for what it is, but for what it represents, a small but meaningful step forward towards a more sustainable future. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Councillors, do we have any questions? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you very much for your contribution, Mr. Bradbury. You could switch the mic off. That'd be great. Thank you. And Ward Councillor down to speak, Councillor Laura James. Welcome to DC. You know the drill by now. When you're ready, you've got 4 minutes.
Does the proposal do harm? Not to the extent that it should be rejected. We need to encourage residents to do everything they can to tackle climate change, and we have all signed up to Climate Change Emergency Declaration, and therein our policies need to be seen in that context. Climate change mitigation and NPPF encourages low carbon technologies. I've consulted with the immediate neighbours, and 3 of the households support the proposal and 1 does not. Since then I've heard from other households in the street who support the application, and the application now has 11 letters of support with no letters of objection. There is no uniform nature to the street scene, no defined building lines, properties both front and off street and others are all set back. The scene is punctuated by many different forms of front gardens. People have made their areas their own, and each has its own character. Over the years, we have seen other properties with carports, and while the report does not have had permissions, they nonetheless form part of the street scene and are not uncommon. EM1 emphasises maintaining visual amenity and avoiding adverse impacts on views. It does not dominate the street scheme. Garages and porches are common. For example, 23rd of I have the application reference, but 23/01512/HSE at 15/8 Merton Road. EM1, the carport does not dominate the skyline or obstruct significant views. The near conservation area, the carport materials and colour complement the local palette as recommended by the Council's conservation area appraisal, further supporting EM1 compliance. The solar carport contributes the Council's sustainability goals, indirectly enhancing the landscape's long-term quality by reducing carbon emissions. This aligns with EM1's broader aims to protect the environment. The solar carport operates silently, ensuring no adverse impacts on the tranquility of the landscape, a key consideration under EM1. The Design and Sustainability SPT encourages sustainable technologies, and the carport renewable energy productively supports this objective. It's minimalistic design, ensure it integrates with the property 17 Merton Road. Policy EM10, high quality design. This is a street with off-road parking for many residents, and the proposal in no way affects these parking standards, as the report sets out. Rather, the only reason for the rejection is whether the carport would be considered to do harm to neighbours, amenity and visual impact. I do not believe it does harm, worthy of a recommendation for rejection. The SBT cannot promote contemporary design and then reject it on its subjectivity. The materials are considered to be too modern. Who actually determines what is too modern or inappropriate objectively? The officers state that the report that the amenity impacts are in the acceptable levels, so it can only be a matter of subjective opinion and not a policy breach as such. I believe that the benefit of the proposal outweighs the harm. I do not believe that it is contrary to EM1 and EM10 and is subjective analysis in this case. We have someone who is trying to do the right thing and we should support them. I am struggling to see reasons for rejection other than subjective views on this carport design. Please support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions for Councillor James? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor James. Questions for officers? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Chair. If I could ask the officers, we've got a material, we'll go to paragraph 9, page 250 of the report. We have in there a statement, it's coming up the impact on neighbourhood amenity, reference to policy EM10, that the proposal would comply with policy EM10 statement. I'd just like that to rest. Then we go on to planning, balance and conclusion. The application, and I take it that next word meant to be fails, not falls, fails to be determined in, is it falls or is it fails? 10.1.
It's false.
It is falls. This application, but it doesn't make sense in English. This application falls to be determined. New one on me. In accordance with the test under section 36.6 of the 2004 Act. What Act? It's not referred to in the report that I could find. I don't know how we're to balance a conclusion when we don't know what that test is. Because if we proposal complies with EM10, then we only need to look at EM1 and we'll talk about that in debate.
Just to clarify, in terms of the EM10 point, on the impact on neighbouring amenity section, there should have probably, looking at the report, been a bit of a prelude to that, to say where EM10 refers to residential amenity specific rather than the high design quality. So, fair point. So it complies with that aspect of EM10. We revert back obviously to the character and we say it fails on that aspect.
But the test that's mentioned in the conclusion?
Councillor Miller, so the test in the conclusion, so the section 38 of it should be the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 is the one that you'll be familiar with, which is applications have to be in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So that's shorthand for that, and noted we'll include it in a slightly elongated way next time. In terms of EM10, you'll be familiar with the fact that it deals with lots of different elements. There's different criteria to it. What the report is saying is that in terms of impact on amenities of residential amenity, overshadowing, etc., it's acceptable in terms of the recommendation. In terms of impact on the street scene, the reason why it's said to fail EM10 is in relation to the impact on the street scene character of the area. And that's the part of EM10 that it's failed. So it's two different parts of EM10 that's being analysed.
Thank you very much. And I've just got one more. This is a carport and it's got solar panels. Are we looking at this from the carport perspective because the solar panels are just flat panels going on top of a carport? If it's the carport that's causing the problem because it's forward of the property and it doesn't look right, or is it the solar panels that are causing the issue with the street scene and everything else? I'd just like clarification.
Essentially, it's the totality of the structure of that built development being forward of the principal elevation. So it's the totality of the structure.
Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've actually just had that point clarified. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Chair. On page 249, issue 3, 8.12, it says the parking standards guidance sets out that a dwelling of this size should retain a minimum of 2 parking spaces, and that the minimum dimensions of a carport should be 2.9 by 5.5, and the proposed development would only be able to accommodate 1 vehicle at a time and not 2, as the submitted plans suggest. But it says, the submitted plan says 5.8 by 5.5. Well, 5.8 is 2.9 times 2, so surely that would accommodate 2 vehicles according to the minimum size requirements. Thank you.
No, I'm not sure if I can see the plans clearly, but obviously there will be differences in terms of the internal and the external capacity of the parking space. And just to know, we're satisfied that that in terms of, it doesn't form any reason for refusal, we're satisfied that that 2 spaces can be accommodated on the application site.
Councillor Bound.
Yeah, could we go back to the block plan? It's the first time I've seen it, because it wasn't in our pack. I can sort of see the 2 cars, my eyes aren't so good. How? I'm not quite sure. They're parked sort of obliquely, are they, those cars? It's going to be somewhat difficult for them to get out of that carport, isn't it?
Yeah, just to clarify in terms of that point, that's what some of the concerns are over 2 spaces in there that we've identified in the report. However, officers are satisfied that essentially 1 can be comfortably accommodated within the carport, whilst the 2nd can be accommodated to the front of the site, which would mean it's in accordance with the car parking standards in any case.
Right. Councillor Jones.
Yes, I'm not quite sure what weight we're giving to the fact there are solar panels, but could we see the photograph? This is immediately adjacent to the northern wall of the building. Could we see the I think we had a photograph of the front of the building. So, will this not be shaded by the building? I assume it's no higher than the sills of the windows, and therefore for much of the year will be shaded.
Solar panels are quite.
It's not really a consideration of the application in terms of planning terms whether the solar panels would or wouldn't be effective in that sense, but it's
So we are just considering the appearance of the structure.
Exactly.
Any more questions? Councillor Gaskell.
I'm just a little bit. I'd just like to question officers about the visual aspects of it. Are you taking into consideration that it's an open-sided structure, or are you considering it just as a building?
No, it's considered for what is proposed as the open-sided structure. But in terms of footprint, it is, just to clarify the exact footprint. Well, to call footprint, I suppose you'd be talking the canopy span of the panelling is 5.8 metres deep by 5.5 metres wide, which again you can see on the block plan. It's a significant structure.
Councillor Court, you had your hand raised again.
Yeah, just to clarify that point you just made, it's the size of the structure you'll have, your objection basically is to, in terms of the planning.
In terms of what's in front of us, that's one of the aspects of it, yes.
Okay, I take it there are no more questions. We'll move to debate. Who would like to start? Oh, silence, getting towards the end of the evening. Councillor Miller?
This is becoming to get a habit. Thank you, Chairman. I think I'll make a comment straight away. I applaud the applicants' attempt at moving along with sustainable development and having solar panels. I know, looking around this committee, a lot of us have got solar panels, albeit on our roofs of the main dwelling. But yes, you can take it in a literal sense that you're putting up 4 posts and a canopy for a carport. I believe in a lot of determination it is a temporary structure because it can be demounted fairly easily, as opposed to a big garage that's going to be put in the front of the house. That would be a different issue. If you look at EM10 and looking at neighbourhood amenities, I fully appreciate you've got that long list of items that go under in the policy. But as we move into an era where we want to have it more and more electricity generated, because the demands in our modern world are going to have more and more, individual households are going to require them to supplement the main grid. This is why we do it in our own houses. So it's a combination. I think we're looking here at harm is the basic thing within the local street scene. A garage would be harm. A carport, to my mind, is a fairly low profile, I'll use that expression, structure. And I see no reason why this couldn't be acceptable, because if that's the only way that these solar panels can be constructed later on, this is going to become more and more part of the street scene, because it's a relatively simple way of putting as a shelter for your car. We're all going to be living with cars of one kind or another, and also a good way of employing the empty space on top of it. There are many examples now in the world that previously we've had all this flat roof availability. Well, now we should be using it for solar panels. So I'm inclined to look at this in a favourable light, this application, for the positive things that it brings along without the substantial harm that other structures could have brought. The carport idea, I think, is a very good one. Thank you, Chair.
Is that a proposal, Councillor Miller?
I'd like to hear other people, but you can come back to me.
Okay. Councillor Watts?
I'm trying to agree with Councillor Miller. I think this is a good idea. Also, with regard to the street scene, I know the road and those those houses are set back, and their houses either side are further, much closer to the road. So I don't know if they'd be slightly masked a bit by the forward-sitting buildings as well. So I don't know that it will have a detrimental effect on the street scene.
Councillor Court?
I'm also in favour of this, but I was looking at the sections of the buildings, the carport we're talking about, it relies on them being totally open, not closing at all. Otherwise, it then does become, shall we say, a fairly solid sort of a structure inside of the house and would wreck the actual street scene in my mind. So yes, on that condition, they're open.
Right, we have 3 speakers in favour so far. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Bound.
Yeah, just to say that I agree with the previous speakers. Basically, it will be sort of prominent. It's bound to be because it's well, it is a structure which will be seen from the road. But when I looked at the previous picture, which showed the front of the house, in terms of the street scene, it's not particularly pretty as it is. It's got bins. I'm sorry to the applicant. It's not particularly all those bins there and whatnot. I don't think that it's going to be detrimental to the street scene. So I would have no difficulty in going along with the proposal.
Okay, Councillor Miller, do you now wish to move approval?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to move that this be approved, and I've done my homework a little bit on this one by looking at the reasons for refusal, and if I could suggest the proposed car park, by virtue of its deciding forward of the principal elevation, in spite of it, and its relationship with the established pattern and development in the area, would not be visually intrusive in the street scene. As the proposal would not be, in that case, the wording I'll leave to the officers, it would not be contrary to the National Policy Framework and all the other references in there. And it should be, application should be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Court. Okay, we have a live proposal moved and seconded.
Jay, I think you just mentioned in terms of the potential parking. I think I think officers are satisfied that parking can be achieved with 2 spaces on site. I think the only way that you would, if you wish to, you could seek through condition a confirmatory plan showing the 2 spaces on completion of the development. That would be within your gift to impose that condition. The 2 other conditions we'd recommend would be normal time limit, clearly, and that the development be carried out in accordance with the materials, etc., that are submitted in the application already.
Chairman, I would take the advice from Mike, and I would like to propose that condition as worded be included in the decision notice of this application.
Yep, happy to do that. And we have a seconder. So in that case, we can move to vote. Wish we should do so now. Those in favour of the proposal to approve, please show. That is carried. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against, please show. Any abstentions, please show. That's 2. Thank you. Right, if we could have the decision, please.
The application is to be recommended for approval. The application is approved. Given that it would not be visually intrusive in the street scene, the conditions to be imposed are approved plans, time limited condition, plan to be submitted demonstrating 2 parking spaces can be achieved to the front of the property, and materials to be approved as per submitted documents.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right, last planning item of the night. White Lane Boarding Cattery. And Gemma, if you could introduce that, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Item 8 seeks planning permission for the replacement of the former cattery buildings with a single dwelling and attached garage. The proposal is for an alternative design scheme to that approved in July 2023, for which that permission is extant. By way of update, it is confirmed that the applicant is seeking the self-build exemption from biodiversity net gain. The description of the proposed development is therefore updated to include reference to the building being self-build, and an informative is also to be included to remind the applicant that in the event the self-build criteria is not met, then biodiversity net gain is to be secured. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed on page 278 to 284 of the main agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And down to speak in support, Mr. and Mrs. Flanagan, thank you for your patience. Welcome to Development Control. When you seat your company, press the right hand button. You've got 4 minutes.
Good evening, Chair, Councillors and Officers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here with my husband to ask for your support in agreeing with your officer's recommendation to approve our self-build planning application. This application represents a personal journey for us. It has been a long-held dream of ours to build our own home, a modest, energy-efficient dwelling. We have worked hard and closely with your officer and other consultees to bring forward a scheme that not only realises that dream, but also responds carefully to policy and guidance, its setting and the concerns of the local community. This represents our vision to create a high-quality, sustainable home for ourselves on a site we legally own and which, most importantly, already benefits from an existing planning permission for a new dwelling. Thank you for your time.
Wow, that was quick. Thank you very much for your contribution. Councillors, do we have any questions for Mr. and Mrs. Flanagan? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for waiting. Do we have any questions for officers? Councillor Miller?
Just to confirm that this is counted as a brownfield site for the erection of this property?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
No further questions. Move to debate. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Durrant.
Yeah, I know this site quite well because we used to house our cats there. It's a good site and it can certainly accommodate what's being proposed. I would be happy to approve the recommendation.
Excellent. We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Freeman. Anyone else wish to speak, or should we just move to vote? Okay, we'll move to vote. Those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Okay, if we could have the decision recorded, please.
Thank you. That application is approved, subject to the conditions listed in the main agenda and the additional informative within the update. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. There being no further items of business, I shall now declare this meeting closed at 8:22 p.m. Thank you everyone for your time.